Picture this, you're stuck on your roof.
Oh, no.
Not to, enjoy the sunset or anything.
Right.
It's the only dry spot left.
Wow.
And you've been surrounded by water for weeks.
Oh, God.
The Mississippi River has turned against, its people.
Oh,
And in all the debris floating by, you
Yeah.
see alligators and snakes.
that's scary.
And this wasn't a movie.
Right.
This was real life
Yeah.
for so many Americans during the Great Mississippi Flood of 1927.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what we're going to be deep diving into today
Okay.
to understand the lasting impact
Mm,
and really the complex web of events
yeah.
that caused this disaster.
So for those of you out there who remember Hurricane Katrina, this flood was much more than just nature's power.
Okay.
Yeah, it exposed a lot about America at the time.
Oh, interesting.
Issues of race,
Yeah.
government response, and really how those in power choose to help
Yeah.
or not in
Wow.
times of crisis.
Yeah. What sources do we have to kind of guide us through this deep dive?
Yeah, well, we have firsthand accounts
Oh, wow.
from survivors,
Okay.
historical analyses that give us the bigger picture,
Okay.
and even some political stuff that was happening behind the scenes.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So let's start with the flood itself.
Okay.
And to understand what happened,
Yeah.
we need to go back to 1926,
Okay.
which was a year of just relentless rain.
Right.
We're talking diary entries
Uh-huh.
from people like Henry Waring Ball.
Yeah.
He described the rain as almost constant for 24 hours
Wow.
and then rain almost all night the next day.
Oh my God.
This wasn't just, a couple of showers.
Yeah.
This was a deluge
Yeah.
that completely saturated the ground.
Right.
And this really set the stage for what was to come.
Now, the Mississippi is no stranger to flooding.
Yeah.
But of course, it had the system of levees
Yeah.
to, try to keep the water in check.
Right.
But the rain in 1926, it just overwhelmed everything. We're talking 27,000 square miles,
Oh my God.
which is like the size of New England.
Gosh.
Yeah, it was underwater.
That's incredible.
This wasn't just a flood.
Yeah.
It was an inland sea.
And it wasn't just the size of the flood.
Right.
It was the speed
Oh, wow.
in which it all happened.
Okay.
Can you imagine hearing a roar like dozens of trains?
Yeah.
That's how survivors describe the sound of the floodwater.
Oh, gosh.
Just surging through
Yeah.
homes, livestock,
Yeah.
entire towns,
Oh, wow.
just swept away
Hey.
in this, churning brown torrent.
Yeah, the personal stories from this time
Yeah.
are really what bring, the devastation into focus. Imagine families clinging to rooftops,
Right.
just watching their world disappear under the rising water.
Yeah.
And this eerie silence
Ugh.
after the initial chaos
Yeah.
is a detail that's mentioned by a lot of survivors.
Right.
This wasn't just a natural disaster. It was
Yeah.
a human tragedy.
And to make matters worse,
Right.
we've all heard the stories
Yeah.
of, alligators and venomous snakes in the floodwater.
Oh, yeah.
For those caught in the flood,
Mm-hmm.
this wasn't just, a scary story. This
Yeah.
was real.
Yeah.
Finding a water moccasin,
Yeah.
swimming through your living room.
Wow.
This wasn't just about property damage.
Yeah.
It was survival
Right.
against the elements
Yeah.
and these creatures
Right.
that were displaced by the flood.
Yeah, we're talking a refugee crisis here.
Okay.
Over 500,000 people displaced,
Wow.
becoming refugees in their own country,
Yeah.
forced to flee their homes
Right.
and find shelter wherever they could.
So all this is happening.
Yeah,
And the president at the time,
right,
Calvin Coolidge,
right.
wasn't exactly rushing to help
Oh,
Silent Cal,
Yeah.
as he was known,
yeah.
saw this as a local issue,
Okay,
something for the states to handle,
right.
which didn't sit well with many,
Yeah.
given the scale of this disaster.
And that's where Herbert Hoover comes in.
Okay.
He was the Secretary of Commerce at the time.
Right.
But he was already pretty well known for his humanitarian efforts.
Wow.
During and after World War I,
Okay.
he organized food relief
Okay.
for, war-torn Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a brilliant organizer,
Wow.
someone who thrived on solving problems.
Okay.
He was also a little bit socially awkward.
Oh, really?
He famously said that he
Yes.
couldn't stand the pneumatic drill of
Right.
constant human contact.
Yeah, I think we all know someone like that.
Yeah, maybe it's you.
Maybe.
But regardless,
Yeah.
Hoover threw himself
Okay.
into these relief efforts,
Mhm.
and he used this relatively new medium, the
Mhm.
radio,
Oh, yeah?
to broadcast a national appeal for aid.
Wow.
And the response was huge.
Okay.
People from all walks of life.
Right.
Kids with lemonade stands.
Oh, wow.
Churches taking collections.
Nah.
Everybody wanted to help. It really captures, the spirit of America at the time, the willingness to come together and help people.
Absolutely.
And Hoover, he was, the ultimate organizer.
Right.
Took charge, working with the Red Cross and the Army.
Okay.
To coordinate this massive relief effort.
Right.
Boats, planes, even hydroplanes.
Wow.
To rescue people from rooftops and trees.
Wow.
Wherever they could find refuge. It was a huge effort.
Yeah.
Very similar to a wartime mobilization.
So as all this is happening, Hoover's getting all this praise.
Right.
But behind the scenes,
a
darker story was unfolding.
Okay.
Especially in the South.
Right.
This is the Jim Crow era.
Yeah.
And these deep-seated racial prejudices,
they
affected everything.
Right.
Including disaster relief.
Yeah.
So Hoover's rise to fame during the flood came at a cost for many Black Americans.
Right.
And that's a story we're going to unpack in part 2 of this deep dive.
Sounds good. So we left off with, this real contrast.
Yeah.
You have Hoover, this great humanitarian, getting praise for his leadership.
Right.
But for so many Black Americans, especially in the South, the reality was totally different. This is the Jim Crow era.
Right.
And those prejudices affected everything. Of course, disaster relief included.
So it's this weird mix of, compassion and this desire to help, but also this system of discrimination that really prevented Black Americans from getting the same help.
Absolutely. For a lot of Black families in the South. Sharecropping was the main way of life.
Right.
It kept them trapped in this cycle of debt to white landowners.
So when the flood hit, this power imbalance just made everything worse.
It amplified it,
What did that look like?
Yeah, so on the ground.
White refugees were often just given aid.
Okay.
But Black refugees had to work for it.
Oh, wow.
They had restrictions on their movement.
Oh, gosh.
In the camps.
Right.
Sometimes they were denied entry altogether.
Oh, my God.
Unless they had a white sponsor.
Really?
To vouch for them.
That's terrible.
It was a system designed to, keep everything the same.
Right.
Even in this crisis.
Oh, wow.
It's just appalling.
Yeah.
That people were denied help.
Right.
Simply because of their skin color.
Yeah.
It's a stark reminder of, how bad things were.
And this wasn't just like a couple of stories.
No, this was widespread.
Right.
Black newspapers at the time.
Yeah.
Like the Chicago Defender, the Pittsburgh Courier, they were filled with accounts.
Oh, wow.
Of these discriminatory practices.
They were using terms like peonage.
And legal bondage.
Uh-huh.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it was a pattern of injustice.
This fear of Black mobility.
Yeah.
This idea that, the flood might empower Black sharecroppers to leave the South as part of the Great Migration.
Right.
That played a role too, didn't it?
Yeah. There's this chilling story about Greenville, Mississippi. Steamboats that could evacuate thousands left the city practically empty.
Really?
Because they didn't want Black residents to escape their debt.
So you have this outrage growing in the Black community.
Right.
And Hoover, who wants to be president, realizes he's got a problem.
Yeah.
Bad press.
Right.
Could ruin his image.
Of course.
As the great humanitarian.
So he does what any good politician would do.
What's that?
Damage control.
Right.
He reaches out to Robert Moton, head of the Tuskegee Institute.
Right.
A very respected figure in the Black community.
So he creates this Colored Advisory Commission.
Yes.
And puts Moton in charge. Was this genuine or was this just damage control?
Probably a little both.
Okay.
The commission was supposed to investigate the conditions in the camps and report back.
Okay.
But for Hoover, it was a way to appease Black leaders and make the bad press go away.
Right.
It was politics.
But Moton wasn't going to be used.
No.
He was a true advocate for Black Americans.
Right.
And he took this role seriously.
He did.
He put together a team of Black leaders.
Yeah.
And they went to find the truth.
Yeah. And what they found was pretty damning.
Okay.
Their report documented everything.
Wow.
The discrimination.
Right.
The forced labor. Yep. The restrictions.
So this put Hoover in a tough spot.
Right.
Here he is trying to look competent and compassionate.
Yeah.
And then this report comes out, exposing the truth.
Yeah, it was a nightmare for him.
So Hoover pressured Moton to soften the report.
Of course.
Because it could damage his political ambitions.
Right.
But then Hoover offers Moton something big.
Okay.
A land resettlement plan.
Wow.
To help black sharecroppers become landowners. This was huge.
Yeah.
Land ownership was the key to power.
Absolutely.
So for black families, this was their chance to break free.
To build a future.
But it was also very risky for Hoover.
Yeah.
Because challenging sharecropping meant challenging the South's economy.
It was a big deal.
Yeah.
White landowners didn't want change.
So Moton's caught in this impossible situation. He has this report that could expose everything, but he also has this chance to make things better.
Does he speak truth to power?
Right.
Or does he compromise?
It's a tough choice.
It is. So what did he do?
It was a classic quid pro quo.
Okay.
A softer report in exchange for land reform.
Wow.
And Moton, thinking he could make history, agreed.
Wow.
He changed the report and supported Hoover.
Okay.
He really believed in Hoover.
Yeah.
He thought Hoover would keep his promise.
And Hoover won.
He did.
In a landslide.
Yep.
He won southern states, which was unheard of for a Republican.
At the time.
And Moton helped him do it.
He did.
But then the unthinkable happened. We've covered the flood, the politics, the broken promises.
Right.
But let's go back to the people. Those whose lives were destroyed.
More than 500,000 displaced.
You're having to start over.
Imagine coming home after weeks or months in a refugee camp. Your house is in ruins.
Yeah.
Everything smells like river debris.
Oh, gosh.
Snakes and frogs are everywhere.
Oh, no.
And this, like, aura of death hanging over everything.
Like Greenville, Mississippi. Yeah, Greenville was really hit hard.
It's hard to imagine.
It is.
The emotional toll that must have taken.
You lose everything.
Your home, your belongings, your sense of security.
And for many, going home wasn't even possible. Their homes were gone.
Yeah.
Their jobs were gone.
It wasn't just about rebuilding houses.
No, it was about rebuilding lives.
What about the sharecroppers?
Yeah.
The black families Hoover promised to help.
With that land resettlement plan?
Did they get to own land?
Sadly, no.
Oh, God.
Moton tried to make it happen.
Yeah.
But Hoover abandoned the plan.
Once he was president.
It was a betrayal.
Wow.
For Moton and for all those families.
It's so disheartening.
Yeah.
That even this huge disaster couldn't change things.
It really shows that these disasters expose inequality.
They don't create the problems.
No.
But they bring them to the surface.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Have we really learned
from our mistakes?
When we see what happened with Hurricane Katrina, it feels like we're still dealing with the same issues.
The echoes of 1927 are still here.
So what can we take away from this?
Disaster response isn't just about logistics. It's about justice.
Right.
And equity.
Making sure everyone gets help.
Regardless of race or class.
Recognizing that disasters don't affect everyone equally.
Exactly.
And that those who are already struggling
are
often hit the hardest.
We need to rebuild trust.
Absolutely.
And address these inequalities. To create a more just society.
This deep dive has been a journey.
Through a crucial moment in history.
We've seen the power of nature.
The good and the bad.
The complexities of human response.
And how those in power respond.
And the lasting impacts of inequality.
But it's also a story of resilience.
Of communities working together. And individuals fighting for a better future.
It's important to remember those stories.
And learn from them.
As we face the challenges of today.
The Great Mississippi Flood of 1927 was a turning point.
It was.
It forced America
to confront some hard truths.
And though the waters receded, the questions it raised
about race justice
and the role of government
still matter today.
This deep dive is over.
Yeah.
But the conversation
must continue.